Imagine a world still trying to recover from one absolutely devastating war, only to find itself stumbling right into another, even bigger one. In just one decade, the 1930s, Europe went from a fragile peace to the brink of total war. So how on earth did it happen so fast? Let's break down the key moments that pushed the world right over the edge.
So, where does this all start? Well, it really begins in the aftermath of World War I, with a peace treaty that for millions of Germans felt less like peace and more like a national humiliation. This deep, simmering anger over the Treaty of Versailles, it was the first major crack in the foundation of Europe's peace.
And that's the big question, isn't it? How did this anger, when mixed with a worldwide crisis, create the perfect storm for another world war? We're going to trace how the dominoes fell, one by one, through one of the most turbulent decades in history.
You know, the First World War was called the War to End All Wars, but the peace that followed, it was tragically built on sand. And at the very center of that instability was the Treaty of Versailles, which placed a series of crushing burdens on Germany that would fuel resentment for years to come.
I mean, just look at these terms. They were crippling. Germany lost a huge chunk of its territory and population, its military was basically dismantled, the Rhineland was made a demilitarized zone, and things like tanks and aircraft were completely forbidden. On top of that, it was hit with massive financial payments. But you know, maybe the most insulting part was the war guilt clause, which forced Germany to take all the blame. And that fueled this really dangerous and popular myth, the stab in the back legend. This was the idea that the German army was never really defeated, but was betrayed by its own politicians. It was a powerful lie and a perfect rallying cry for extremists.
Okay, so you've got this deep sense of national humiliation simmering away. And then the next huge domino falls. A global economic crisis that doesn't just hurt people's wallets, it makes them lose all faith in democracy itself. See, the Great Depression wasn't just an economic event. It was a crisis of confidence. When banks were failing and jobs were vanishing, people's trust in their governments just evaporated. They started searching for radical answers, for strong leaders who promised them a way out of the chaos.
And the human cost? It was just staggering. By 1932, in Germany alone, about 6 million people were out of work. And that's not just a statistic, right? That's 6 million stories of fear, of desperation, and a growing hunger for drastic change, no matter what it took.
So, what did the German government do? Their big solution was austerity, slashing government spending, which, of course, only made things worse for ordinary people. And you can see the political result right here on this chart. It's so clear. As government spending went down, the share of the vote for extremist parties, especially the Nazis, just shot through the roof. Economic pain was directly fueling political radicalism. And into this void stepped authoritarian leaders like Adolf Hitler in Germany and Benito Mussolini in Italy. And their sales pitch, man, it was seductive. To a public that was desperate, they promised strength, order, and a return to national pride. The reality, of course, was the complete opposite. What they actually delivered was totalitarian power, aggressive foreign policies, and the total destruction of democracy.
So now Germany is re-energized, right? It's got this aggressive new ideology, and it's rebuilding its military. What happens next? It starts to openly challenge the old rules and tear up the Treaty of Versailles, step by step. And there were 3 huge tests in the late 1930s. First, sending troops back into the Rhineland, then annexing Austria, and finally, kicking off a crisis over the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia. Each one of these was a calculated gamble, designed to see just how far the other powers in Europe could be pushed before they pushed back.
In March 1936, Hitler took a huge risk. He marched troops back into the Rhineland, a direct violation of the treaty. He was testing the waters. And what did Britain and France do? Pretty much nothing. The gamble paid off spectacularly, and Hitler's reputation at home soared.
2 years later, it was the Anschluss, the union with Austria, again totally forbidden by the treaty. This time, German troops marched in and were greeted like heroes. This was a huge strategic win. Germany didn't just gain millions of people and new resources, it also managed to surround the nation of Czechoslovakia on 3 sides.
So who's next? Czechoslovakia. Hitler started demanding the Sudetenland, a region with a large German-speaking population. He cooked up stories about them being persecuted, and just like that, he created a massive international crisis that brought Europe to the absolute brink of war.
So, how did the rest of the world respond to all this escalating aggression? Well, they responded with a policy that has become one of the most infamous words in diplomacy: appeasement. Now, to understand appeasement, you have to remember the absolute trauma of World War I. The memory of that slaughter haunted leaders in Britain and France. They were under huge pressure from the public to avoid another war at all costs, and they sincerely believed they could satisfy Hitler by giving in to what they hoped were his last demands.
And this quote, it just perfectly captures that tragic, misplaced optimism. The British Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, came back from a conference in Munich where they agreed to let Germany take the Sudetenland without even consulting the Czechs, and he truly believed he had saved the peace. He told people to go home and sleep soundly.
But this policy was frankly a catastrophic failure. Instead of satisfying Hitler, every single concession just emboldened him. It sent a clear message that the Western democracies were not willing to fight, and with every piece of new territory, Germany just got stronger and stronger.
So, having swallowed up Austria and the strategic heart of Czechoslovakia, Hitler felt unstoppable. He was now ready for his final move before the war, the one that would make a much bigger conflict absolutely inevitable.
This is the date. This is the day when that fragile peace finally and completely shattered.
On September 1st, 1939, German forces stormed across the border into Poland.
This was it. This was the breaking point. Hitler had miscalculated. He thought Britain and France would back down one more time. He was wrong. They had finally drawn a line in the sand. The policy of appeasement was officially dead.
Britain and France honored their promise to Poland. They declared war on Germany. And just like that, the series of crises and concessions that had defined the 1930s finally exploded into the Second World War.
And that leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? Looking back at the anger over Versailles, the desperation of the Great Depression, the failure of appeasement, was there a moment? Was there a different choice that could have stopped the world's slide into war? It's a heavy question, and one that historians are still debating to this day.